You ever have that one friend that no matter what, no matter how long it's been, no matter how far away they've been, you connect with them at a level that is beyond anything else? Well, I have a friend like that, and he's on the show today.
Currently rocking in the school of life. He is here talking about stuff and whatever's going on in his brain. You know it is 100% Bridget!
All right, here I am. It's me talking about living life and loving Jesus. And if you're watching me on YouTube, you can see my friend right now. He's hanging out with me. His name is Dan. And I'm going to have him introduce himself and talk a little bit about himself. And we're just going to roll right in with the show today. So, Dan, feel free.
Hey, everybody. My name's Dan. I'm his friend. And he's 100% Richard, that's for sure. All there is to it. Yeah, Richard and I spent our high school years together, our early adult life together. And then I moved away, got out of California. But it wasn't because of him. It's because, life happens.
Life happens. You know what? So I've been hanging out with you now. We actually met in high school, right?
Yeah.
So probably what, our sophomore year? When did you move to California? I guess that's the question.
California, 10th grade. My first memory of you. We were in PE class, and Haas had us lined up on these numbers. And I was number 3, and you were directly to my right, whatever number that was. And the first thing I thought of, and Richard, don't take offense to this, was, I'm not the only big guy here.
Yeah.
I do not do gym. I do not do PE. I just, But you know what? From that point on, our friendship grew and grew and grew, and we can talk about that as we go. But,
yeah.
But that is my first memory of you.
I think we were wearing doctor shirts too.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we were. Because those are like super comfortable shirts. The V-neck old school one color doctor shirts. I was like, hey, I like your shirt. I think we did one of those and kind of had the conversation that went going after that. So
yep.
That's awesome. That's good to remember. So from high school, then, well, I'll start with this because we didn't really have, our high school friendship wasn't as I think as close as it was after high school when you returned from college. So because I got married and did all that stuff, and we had an off and on solid friendship in high school, but I know I lived one way and you didn't. So I would do things obviously that you weren't a part of at the time, that we kind of meshed together the way we lived life, yep. And and I think when I look at that time frame in high school, because high school just was, in my opinion, stupid. Just the way life is, high school life, and now we're both 52 right now. We're both 51 right now. No, wait.
Wait a minute. I'm not 51 yet.
What? No, that's right. Your birthday hasn't.
I turned 51 in a week.
In a week, July 20th. Uh-oh. And so we've known each other for a dang long time. And I've unfortunately always been older, and then you catch up with me, and then we have the battle of the old man text messaging.
There's a 6 months window? No.
3 months?
5 month window where I can just say you're old.
That's right.
And after that, you're not old.
Yeah, then we're even. That's the way that works. Because high school. Let's look at high school life. So we hung out in high school. Like I said, we had literally 2 different lifestyles at the time. Because I remember being a part of like the Teens Against Drugs program, And I think you were, and I was just there to not be in school.
There may have been an interest in another person there too for you. Can't remember, but
Oh, maybe.
There was drama. There was several. We had not the Renaissance, Elizabethan fair.
Oh yeah, we did the fair stuff.
That's another memory. I had something I forgot at home, and here we are going in our Elizabethan Renaissance costumes from high school to my house in the back of your scooter.
On my motor scooter.
It was just a little red thing that you had. Yeah.
And we were hauling to get, because we forgot. I remember that. That's all. Okay. You got me. I think we actually had 3 people on it at the time too. I think there was a third body. I can't remember. But that was so needless to say, we've been, like I said in my intro, that we have a friend. Everybody should have a friend, more or less, that no matter what happens, we reconnect. If we stopped and had lunch together, we would have those moments. We would have those things happen, and we would just kind of mesh right back into the way things have always been. And I think that's so awesome to have somebody like that in you. And I hope the other way around, you know. And so I'm gonna jump to some verses that I have pre-set up. I'm just being honest here. So, and this is I'm gonna read this out of Proverbs. This is Proverbs 18:24, and I'm gonna read it out of the Passion Translation because it says something interesting. It says, "Some friendships don't last for long, but there is one loving friend who is joined to your heart closer than any other." And if you actually read that in the New King James Version, it says closer than a brother. So you take those two things. I have a good brother. It took a long time for me to get connected with him on the level that we're connected on. But in our case, with you and me, I could actually say I have one brother, but I have a second brother that I didn't ask for, but I got. That sounded negative.
Like it or not, you got me.
You know, I got you. So, oh man, check out that cup. I have one of those too. Look at that.
I wonder where I got it from.
I think you're the only one that got one for free.
I have connections.
So in our case, what are some things that you would say, hey, that you know, for the people that the people that watch this and listen to this, what are some things that you could say about friendship between that maybe you and I have gone through and have been a part of, that you could put out there and say, this is something that God motivated us at some point to actually stay together as friends? Does that make sense? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, well, with any friendship, with any relationship, really, there's you've got your peaks and valleys. I mean, that's just a given. I don't care. You put 2 different people together, and you're just going to have differences. And there's enough differences between us that there's differences, you know. But there's a lot more common ground between us that we have been able to cling on to.
Yeah.
No, not cling on as in, you know, Star Trek, but
Kapla.
cling on to. And I think over the years that has grown. I mean, from the graduation service that when I came back from college that I went to.
Yeah.
From that point on is when our main that was the starting point of us getting closer to what we are now.
Yeah, I remember that because we went to whatever year it was. Me and Brandy went to graduation because we had friends of ours that were actually graduating high school still, because we got married right out of high school, you know, and you were there, and which shocked me. And there was another friend of mine there too, and we went bowling. Didn't we go bowling afterwards? I think we went bowling.
That. We went back to your house and we hung out. I remember that.
Yeah, and then we went and did some things outside of, and you and I, like, whatever that process was, actually reconnected or rekindled a fire, stoked a fire that put us back on a track, you know, especially in my case, because if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't have met Jesus. There's 2 people in my life. There's 3 people in my life that took me towards that direction. A guy named Joe. I went to his youth group, right?
So did I.
Yeah, hey. and between you and him planting the seeds and then seeing my brother's life change ridiculously, which shifted me into the position that said, oh, you know, I can live that life, you know. And I know that you and I had we had some, or you had some difficulties with some things at one point, and I got the opportunity to be a part of your rise, you know, or re-rise, whatever the word would be, you know. And if we didn't have those connections, that kind of connection, I know in my case, I probably wouldn't even exist anymore, you know. I know my wife and kids would have kept me, you know, if we would have stayed together, you know, because that first 3 or 4 years of marriage are the toughest, and which means that I spent actually more time with you during those first couple of years of marriage than I think I did at home, because we worked together in the same place. We did everything after work together. We went and did things, you know, all the, you know, the clubs, the things that were a part of that.
Denny's, all the Denny's we went to.
All the Denny's we went to, the most northern Denny's that we could get to within a certain amount of time. My wife still yells at me for that one. Still to this day. and the conversations that we've had. So if we took the living life, loving Jesus moniker that this show kind of leans towards, what are some things, maybe not even connected to the two of us, that from when you and I met to where you are today, what are some things that you would say, hey, God moved in these places, whether we realized it or not?
Well, you know, for me, my life, here's one of the differences that benefited us in our relationship. My life growing up was, my parents always took me to church. You know, whenever church was there, the church doors was open, we were there. So I was raised as a believer from the get-go. And by the time I was in my early 20s, high school, early 20s, I was really testing the ground for me. And the one solid thing that has always been there was Jesus, you know, the Holy Spirit and God, the whole Trinity, you know, and as my life has been going, you know, peaks and in the deepest valleys, which, you know, I've been rock bottom, and you were one of those people that grabbed me at that bottom. But the one thing that has always been there has been, you know, the foundation of Christ.
Right.
And I think looking back over the years, I may have been, I think our pivotal points were like this, you know,
okay.
and then eventually it seems like as soon as we both got our life on track with the Lord, I moved out of California.
Well, you know, I think God puts people in place, you know, to help each other out. You and I, in that instance, I would say when we first kind of got together as friends, we were kind of like oil and water, you know. Does that make sense? I mean, not as bad, you know, but that oil and water, I grew up, let's see if I can make this one word, a Catholic Lutheran New Ager, right? You know, so whatever my mom was into at the time, we did. My grandma was Catholic, so we went to the Catholic, you know, I took First Communion, all that stuff. So I had an idea, you know, of who God is, you know, and but it was more of the dead dude on the cross God, you know, compared to the resurrected Jesus. That's where the power lies, you know.
A religion versus a relationship.
Yeah, I truly was, okay, so, and religion's a lot easier to break than a relationship is, you know. And so that was my foundation. And so it was really easy for me to just go do kind of whatever I wanted to do. and I had I had good parents. I had a good household. I wasn't beat up or anything like that. So I had a good home. But for whatever reason, the enemy, for lack of better terminology, will say you don't have a good home. So you stay out as late as you can. Drink this, eat that, smoke this, because it's going to make you feel better, so on and so forth, and this and that, So I'm living this life. That's my high school life, and you're living, going to church every Sunday, no matter what, things like that. And God puts us together, and I think that's an interesting thing, because like I said earlier, without you, who knows where I would be, and vice versa, and I wouldn't doubt that even in our adventures together, that I may have taken you down to some of those pits, because of who I was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but you know what? It's not you, it's me. I allowed myself to go there. Whether or not who's to say that I wouldn't go on there anyways?
Right.
Down that road,
But it's easier with a friend.
Of course. Back to that. Well, there's another verse that has mentioned that, but I don't know. It's just one of those things in life where you grow. We have grown together, and not just as in a friendship, but as in a brothers in Christ.
Yeah.
And I think regardless of our past, regardless of what you have done by yourself or what I have made you do, and vice versa, God knew it already.
Yeah.
God knew back in 10th grade that in 5 years our life would have done whatever it is that it did in 5 years.
Yeah.
He knew back in 10th grade that, however many years from then, we'd be sitting video chatting across the United States together.
Publicly for people to watch.
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. So I'm gonna read this verse because I think you sort of brought it up, or I kind of brought it up. And this is 1 Corinthians 15:33. And we have both struggled with this in our walk and with other friends outside of our friendship. And I just broke this down. I'm not going to say it's out of context, but go read the context of this, because it's an interesting dynamic when this verse pops in, and it says, "Evil company corrupts good habits." So I come along in your life, and you're at a stage in your life where I really this Christian thing is beating me up. This religion thing is beating me up, and I'm in a place where whatever, I don't care, and we communicate with each other. So I could say, hey, if I connect with that guy, I can go do the things that I want to do outside of my home structure. Does that make sense? So, and then outside of that, I had some friends that would go, hey, I'll pay, I'll go, outside of our own friendship. So being able to always come back to Dan, to always be able to come back and say, hey, dude, I did this. How would you feel? Or vice versa, you come to me and say, hey, dude, I did this. This is something that I did in my life. How do we, and we would communicate our way out of those situations. Does that make sense? Do you remember a time where maybe we've done that kind of thing for each other, or maybe even dragged each other to a location where we shouldn't have gone and then pulled ourselves back out of that situation, because of our connection with each other? Am I even making sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to dust the cobwebs out of my brain.
I got a couple of those too.
Brains or cobwebs?
Well, I only have one brain, and it's not being used very well.
Oh, yes, it is. It is. As far as, taking you to the deepest despair, and then, or vice versa, and saying, hey, we need to back off. I think, nothing jumps right up front, but I'm sure that there has been, even, well, I think there was a time when we both were working in Palm Desert,
Yeah.
and we went to a certain place with a friend.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was a little bit uncomfortable, I think, for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was even,
But-
yeah. I'll just, if you don't mind, I'm just going to say it.
Sure,
So,
go ahead.
so we had a friend of ours that was of the homosexual lifestyle, and we took it upon ourselves. And I think what happened was he goes, "Hey, I go everywhere with you guys. Why don't you go to one of my places?" And we said, "Sure, why not?" And because we were in that place, we're like, "Hey, whatever, you know." And I'm gonna. This is funny because back in the day, the company Coors would not sell their product to. They do now, but they wouldn't sell their product to the gay establishments. So you couldn't order a Coors Light at a gay bar, you know. So it doesn't. I mean, be honest here. So I remember we walked in there, and the first thing we'd said, "Can I get a Coors Light?" And they're like, "You're straight," because we should have known that, you know.
Well, I think they could have figured that out.
Yeah,
Regardless of the beer.
they would have. Yeah, that's true too. They would have figured that out. But I mean, he was a great friend, and in the long run, nothing. You know, sin is sin. You know, we still love the person. You know, and I think that. You know, so yeah, we did some stuff, you know, where we shouldn't have done some stuff, you know, and I think in the long run we had conversations about that and about those kinds of things, and you know that would be a place where, hey, yeah, hey, let's go do this. No.
Ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, you know, so, but those are the kinds of things that I think, those are the kinds of things that I believe we go through, that I guess you could say, for lack of better terminology, God allows you to do certain things in a sense that he knows that you're going to learn from that. Hey, don't do that, you know? So
Well, there is the free will. God gave us the free will for a reason, you know, and I truly believe that once you are his child, you're not, he's never going to abandon you,
no,
no matter what. And he allows you to do whatever it is that you're going to do. But he also knows that he has you for when the time comes where you're just going to, say, I messed up big time. How do we get out of this?
yeah.
That's when God goes, I'm right here.
And that's where the term repentance comes from.
Yeah, I mean, the 180-degree turn, you know, as far as away as you can step away from God and your relationship with Christ, it's just one step and an about face back.
Yeah.
He's right there, you know, and that's, so no matter what we have done and what we have, our path has gone, I believe God has allowed both of us individually. You know, there's a time where you had moved away to New Mexico, and
Yeah.
you have your story there,
Oh.
and God allowed, boom, hey Richard, enough is enough.
Yeah.
You know, and there's, so separately we've had our time away from each other
Right.
at our deepest spot, which I think is interesting how we weren't locationally, we weren't close together, for us to say, hey, I'm here for you,
Yeah.
but we were.
Oh, yeah, and we stayed in communication, you know, because that was like when the internet was starting, and I think you introduced me to a chat room for the first time.
Yes.
They're like, hey, I think you called me and said, hey, go try this thing. I'm like, okay. Oh, I can communicate with my friend. I thought it was the neatest thing ever. And now look what we're doing.
The fact that you said chat room is dating yourself.
That's okay. All right. Well, I was chatting with you. So when I think it's interesting because my time, my 4 years away, I moved to New Mexico for I think 4 years, right around 4 years, and part of the reason why I did that was to get away from a lot of stuff that I was doing. That was an underlying part. Is that, well, if I go over here, I won't know anybody. There's, I could adjust my life. I got saved just before I got married, and then I questioned, did I really? Because I didn't really change my life that much, but I definitely had the voice. Hey, don't do this. Hey, the Holy Spirit is speaking to me and doing the things and the convictions, of the things that I would go do anyway, And when I got to New Mexico, I found all I did was just find another group of people that were just like me, and connected with that atmosphere again, So I'm going to say this: sometimes moving away doesn't help, because moving away doesn't help in the sense that if you moved away to make a change, but you didn't actually make a change, moving away does nothing.
Yep.
So the change has to be there, because I think it's interesting that when I came back to California is when I had the mindset. I had a change. I sat down. I almost died, and I don't know if I almost died or not, because I still to this day don't know what happened. I can only speculate. I left a strip club so out of my mind I had no idea how I got home. I think I've told you that story. Yep. And all I know is I was home. I was in a gutter in my own vomit, and then I was home. So I like to tell people that God picked me up and moved me, and He took my car and everything. He made everything happen. So like I said, I was so blacked out I had no idea what actually happened. But I like to say God picked me up and moved me to where He needed me to be. And then the next day I rededicated my life to Christ in my living room with nobody else home. And when it meant something, and when I moved back to California, then suddenly a bunch of stuff opened up for me to come back to California. Just in time, by the way, for you to go through some stuff. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about that, if you're comfortable, go ahead.
I am. And it's interesting, the joke, if you play country music backwards, you get your wife back, your dog back, your truck back, or something like that. I forget exactly how it goes. But I was rock bottom. When you came back, I was rock bottom, going through my rock bottom. And, I landed myself in jail. And that's my rock bottom. From that point, it's like, you know what? I was going through a divorce at the time. My grandmother passed away, and my brother and my parents moved out of California, and I was the only one in California by myself. Didn't have mommy and daddy to run back home to help me out. It was just me and the Lord. At that time, I didn't realize how valuable having the Lord in my life prior meant to this point. So I'm sitting in this jail cell, a holding tank, and throughout my time, as I was, the farther I got away from my walk with my relationship with the Lord, at first the tap of the Holy Spirit just, all right, I got you, I hear you, I'm okay. Eventually, that tap of the Holy Spirit was just a finger tap.
Yeah.
Until God says enough is enough, Dan, and He takes out that 2x4 and it smacks you over the head, and you land yourself in a jail cell. That's when I said, all right, Lord, first of all, forgive me for what I've done. Because what I've done was just completely wrong. I don't know what's going to happen to me in the future. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where this path is going for me. But Lord, protect me. Protect me in my future. If it's the next X amount of years in jail, I'm going to need your protection.
Yeah.
And then most of all, Lord, use me. And that's exactly what happened. He protected me. Now I was only in county jail. I was only in there for, probably a span of, I don't know, 2 months. But in that 2 month period, I was able to see the Lord. And from that point on, it's like, all right, you've had my back. You have, unfortunately, he had to show me, and it wasn't me searching for him. It was him searching for me.
Yeah.
And if that's even accurate, because he doesn't have to search for me.
No. He knew you before you were born, and you just had to recognize that he knew you.
Yeah. And at that point, even though I was saved at a very young age, I think at that point in my life was the time where I was like, all right, Lord, I'm all yours. From here on out, I'm all yours. And I got myself back in church, got involved. It's where I met my wife now. And it's at that point where you came, and I needed a ride home, and you came and got me. And there was other friends, mutual friends that we had that I was hanging out with at the time, and but you were the one that just was that tool to take me from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I think we went to Denny's that night.
It's that importance of being able to return, because a lot of people think that God, you find yourself in a mess, or you find yourself in a wreck, or you find yourself in quote unquote in trouble. And so our brain tells us, our physical brain tells us, well, that's because you're so far away from God, like you mentioned earlier, that we're so far away from God, but God actually has never actually left us. He sits there and watches us he watches us fall. And just like he did with Adam and Eve in the garden, he told Adam, don't eat of that fruit over there. And his wife went and ate of the fruit, and he did too, So it's where your focus lies. If you're focused on the whole garden, or are you focused on the thing you're not supposed to do in that garden? I think that's where both of us made the same decision. We said, well, I got this whole garden over here that God's given me, but I'm going to focus on this one little tiny thing. And it just happens to not be the garden, and you're over here. I was in New Mexico doing that, and you're over here in California doing that. I come back, I don't know, every church says rededicate your life. That's God going, okay, you finally made the quality decision to follow me and be a part of me and have a relationship with me. Jesus speaking, not me. I'm no good in comparison, So you make that decision. I make that decision. I show up at your house. Well, actually, I think I did come and pick you up from the county where you were. I came and got you. I actually hung out with your uncle, I think it was, or he was your boss at one point.
Yeah, Carmel.
Yeah. Okay. So we were hanging out outside having discussion with a third friend that I won't even go there. And so we had this really, really good discussion. He called your dad. This is happening outside after I found out. And he wasn't, and I don't know if he told you this or not, I may be remembering it wrong, but he wasn't going to help bail you out. And it was through our discussion outside in the parking lot of who I am and who you are, and I would be willing to help guide and do all this stuff, that he made the decision to pull out the card and take care of business. And so and then I remember going to your house a couple of days later and having for two men to sit and cry in your little apartment there, your duplex or whatever it was, and just to have a full on, I don't know how else to put it, and to actually have that type of conversation and that type of love and that type of, I remember we both had our Bibles out. We were both talking about stuff. And I don't know why that sticks in my mind so much, but it was a pivotal moment, I think, for both of us, because it wasn't too long after that I stepped into youth ministry.
Yep.
And so all of that was happening. We were still, because I think we were still in the process of actually moving, when all that happened. So we end up in this same point at the same time, in the same decision-making processes. and we get to now grow with each other. And I'm going to bring up our last verse. It says, it's Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. And I think for us to get to that point where we could actually sharpen each other and grow from that point, as compared to just, hey, we're going to horse around, we're going to have fun, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to try this, you know, I like this church, you like that, you know, blah, blah, blah. Where we could actually say, at this point in our lives, we were going to do this, and we did. Does that make sense? Do you have anything to add to that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, and we did. I mean, that's where so much, you know, iron does sharpen iron, and that's where I think our accountability to each other, with our relationship to the Lord, began. I mean, God allowed all the other stuff. The Amish have this thing called Ramspringa, which allows the youth to do whatever they want and then come back. You know, and in a certain way, that's what free will is. You know, and sometimes, unfortunately, the free will just goes and you never come back. But when you do come back, if you have that person in your life, and your wife is one thing, and a brother or sister or whatever another, but if you have that one person, that one, you're that person for me, who can say, hey, Dan, wait a minute, I love you too much to allow you fill in the blank. You know, and I think at that point in time, when I came back, you're now coming back, is when our physical closeness was able to be strong. Our relationship was able to be strong enough to where we're not physically close to each other, you know?
Yeah.
And it's over all the past however many years it is that I've been out of California. Every time that we connect. And it's not an awkward, oh, okay, what'd you do? Okay, what do I talk about now? We're back.
Yeah.
As if it was, you know, umpteen years ago.
Yeah. And I think that's the one friend, you know. I'm going to go back to the Proverbs that we started with. It said some friendships don't last for long, but there is one loving friend who is joined to your heart closer than any other. And that's where you fall in my life, you know. And like I say, is it closer than a brother? Yeah, I can tell my brother a lot of stuff, but I don't. I tell you a lot of stuff, you know, in comparison, you know. And I think that's one of those things that I think God put us, like I say, God put us together for a purpose and for a reason. And because I'm gonna make sure I'm correct here, because you are actually an elder at a church, right?
Yep.
So you are functioning in ministry, doing those kinds of things, compared to, you know, the bar, you know, not the law one, you know. And I've had the opportunity, and I think I've had some opportunities to pastor and do those kinds of things, and now I get to do this, you know. And I'll be honest, I would tell somebody a while back, hey, yeah, I'm a pastor over at this church. You know, that's what, who? Like, what? No, yeah, you know. So that's the typical response, you know, from, not anymore, you know, but when I first started, that was the response, you know. And now it's like, now people come up to me and go, you're like not even the same person, you know, and because God does change us that much, you know. Well, God allows us to become who he made us to be, you know, because we're all designed to be unique. I am not you and you are not me. We have a lot of things in common, but I do things the way God has me do things, and God has you do the way God does you, you know. So we're unique in that aspect, but we still have had the opportunities that God says, okay, so after all of that, why don't you be a leader in my church?
And apply what you've done in the past.
Yeah.
What you've done wrong or right or whatever, apply that to now, and be able to use what was meant for evil used for good now.
Yeah, that's
You know,
that's
yeah,
good.
I mean, there's been several times that I have been able to use, and my testimony is a lot longer than what we have time for, but I have used my testimony over and over and over and over again, you know, helping those out, you know, and that's what it's all about, you know, pointing others to Christ,
Yeah.
you know, and living life loving Jesus, you know, and that's exactly what it is. You're living your life, and you're loving Jesus.
Yeah.
And part of loving Jesus is loving others.
Yeah, and,
You know?
and no matter who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter any of those things, is learning to love and learning to do those things and being a part of other people's lives and watching them grow and seeing them do great things and stepping out into stuff that maybe most of us wouldn't do, you know, because I know you sing and you did a lot of choir stuff and in church and did all that kind of stuff. You still do now, right? You still do that?
Not yet. No, our church is too small.
Okay. Well,
But, yeah.
it'll get there. There's talented people there to grow that section that needs to be
yeah.
grown. So you're going to move forward, and you and your wife together, I totally see moving forward in that kind of thing. So that'd be cool. You know, let me know if that happens. So, but I'm gonna close this down because that thing said we only had a couple minutes left. But
Yep.
and then I'll reconnect with you afterwards, and we'll talk about other stuff. You know, so I just want to say this before I shut down. Go ahead. No? Okay. So I'm going to say this real quick. This is my buddy. This is my friend. This is the person that God gave me. That's not my wife, but I have the same communication and I have the same love for him because this is what he's done for me. He's helped me move. He's helped me grow. And I believe I've done the same thing in his past. So I want to say thank you, Dan, for being the awesome friend that you are. And if you have anything to throw in at the end before we shut down, this is your time.
Hey, I can say the same thing back at you. Love you, man. You have been more than that, brother. You have been there for me, and I can't thank God enough for you. And we've shared this in the past, but you know, you are definitely 100% Richard, and I'm definitely 100% not.
You're 100% Dan. That's all right. So, guys, thank you for listening. I got to throw in a couple of business things. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and ring the bell so that you know when my videos are coming out. And if you're listening on audio, I'm available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, or anywhere that podcasts are available. Once again, my friend Dan, we had a great conversation. Right on, right on.